What's good everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Today we have some interesting discussion topics to go over, so let's go ahead and get right into it. And we're starting off with Capcom's secret Nintendo Switch exclusive that was interesting because it was called Guillotine and we didn't really know what it was, or did we? Now this past week on the Spawncast, we were talking about the various different Capcom leaks that have been going out. I've made a number of videos myself on it, and one of the more interesting things that was listed was a code name of Guillotine, and nobody really knew what that was, but apparently it was already leaked at one point. So Nate from Direct Feed Games, or Nate the Hate, he talked about the game on the Spawncast, saying that this is going to be a Ghosts and Goblins game, or Ghouls and Ghosts. You guys know that series, right? The Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Super Ghost Goblins, all that stuff, whatever one it is. I know this Capcom makes it. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? The really hard one that makes me want to throw my controller every single time I play it. But yeah, that franchise is apparently coming back in some way as a timed exclusive for the Nintendo Switch, and that's what the game is. Now, this is definitely news to me, and John from Spawnway was also a little bit surprised too when Nate was saying this. But then I researched it a little bit more and I kind of looked at it even during the podcast, and yeah, it showed up that yeah, that was exactly what it was. So it was already leaked beforehand, so nobody's gonna get in trouble or anything like that. Although obviously Capcom doesn't like the fact that a lot of this stuff has leaked, right? Their whole pretty much planning and development for the next 3 to 4 years. So this Nintendo Switch game, when it comes to the timing of its release, this game apparently is supposed to come out in early 2021, and it's going to be a timed exclusive. It's not going to be an outright exclusive, it's going to be timed, so for like 3 to 6 months maybe, and then it will show up on other platforms, maybe like PC or PlayStation and Xbox. So we're gonna have to wait and see what it is. So I will first and foremost say just my own impressions, or not impressions, but my own thoughts about this. That game sucks. Like, it's on the, it sucks as in like I hate playing it because it's just so difficult. It's on the NES or the Super NES Online, Nintendo Switch Online, and me and my brother were playing that game. I played it back in the day and just used to get my butt kicked. So recently though, I think it was either last year or the year before, something like that, probably last year, me and my brother were playing the game and he was just trying so many times to get through, and we even had to use the Nintendo Switch Online instant save states because the game is just too difficult. The game is just so difficult, and you can screw yourself over if you don't get certain types of weapons and you lose a certain amount of health. I mean, it is just hard. So it's going to be interesting when they do bring this game back. How is the form factor going to be? Is it going to be 2D and just going to go with the really high quality, maybe sprite work or 3D model graphics? Or are they going to try to make a 3D action adventure game? I'm kind of leaning towards the former than the latter with it, because I think they're probably going to want to keep the budget lower and get the old school fans back into this. And the Nintendo Switch is a perfect platform for that type of game. People do love their brutal platformers. Games like Hades, for example, that can get extremely difficult, is doing really well on the Nintendo Switch. So if they were to bring out something like this with that type of hardcore difficulty, 2D, old school, get back the Super Nintendo fans and the NES fans that love those style of games, I think that it's going to be a smash hit as long as the game is good. But Capcom is finally starting to show some nice support for the Switch, which I knew was going to happen if the Switch was successful. If the Switch was successful, I knew Capcom would kind of throw a bit more weight behind it, because they understand more so than anybody that for their games, they need install base. Install base drives sales. They could make great games, but if you don't have enough systems that are out there, there's no point in making a bunch of great games for a platform or spending a lot of resources when there's not enough people that are going to buy it, because the majority of people who own a system aren't going to buy your game for the most part, unless it's like a Nintendo first party or like a, GTA or something like that. most people aren't gonna buy the game. Very few games have really high ratios when it comes to the platform that it's on. So Capcom knows this, and I think it would be a perfect time as the Nintendo Switch crosses 70 million units plus heading into next year to release a game like this for the old school fans. And I think it should be pretty good, and we should hear about it. Probably, I mean, it could be a Game Awards type of thing, but I'm not so sure about that. I would suspect that it's going to be like a early January or February type of direct thing. I think Capcom and Nintendo are going to work together to announce it, just like they work together to announce a lot of the games that are coming exclusively or timed exclusives like Monster Hunter Stories 2 and Monster Hunter Rise, for example. So it should be interesting to see how all of this works out. But I'm excited to see more Capcom support coming over to the platform. Reminds me of the Wii when Capcom started putting out some unique and interesting games on the Wii. Monster Hunter Tri, for example. Also games like Zack and Wiki, that was a game that they put out, and other ones as well. So what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And I'm telling you, man, the reason why it's called Guillotine, because that's what's going to happen. You're going to want to cut your head off after playing this game. Put your controller in a guillotine. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts. Comment section below. All right, guys, and moving on to the next topic here. This might be a little bit controversial, what I'm about to say, but it's not due to anything outside of me analyzing and looking what's going on and looking at what Sega and ATLUS have been saying about their games and multi-platform development. So this is more of an in-depth discussion. So I was looking over the different JRPGs, RPGs that have been selling install base compared to review scores and what the developers and publishers, more like it, have been saying about some of the sales of their games. So one game that stood out to me that I wanted to talk about, which I haven't discussed too much yet here, is Final Fantasy VII Remake and the performance of that game. So that game came out earlier this year in the first quarter or so, and I do think that it did good. I think that the game is solid. It's getting some Black Friday discounts. It's even going to do better over the Black Friday shopping period because it's as low as $24 right now at this point, $30 right now at this point. So that's pretty good. So I think it's going to sell better with the sales. But I do have to say, I think many people, and I would say Square Enix included, thought that it was going to do a lot better. And don't worry, I'm ramping up to the whole Persona part, guys, for those who are reading the title or however I end up doing it. Don't worry, we're ramping up to what I'm about to talk about. So if you look at it, I think they said it sold around 5 million copies shipped and also sold, right? So shipped out 5 million copies, but that was at the reports a bit ago. And that's really good. Most games, 99% of games don't even get near 5 million copies sold. But if you look at that massive 100+ million install base of the PlayStation 4, 110 million plus when the Final Fantasy VII Remake game came out, I would have figured with the history and the stature and the buildup of this game being announced back 5 years ago, 2015, people having the anticipation that this game would have been a 10 million unit seller in 6 months or so. I never would have thought that it wouldn't have broken the 10 million unit sales range fairly quickly, just because of the amount of PlayStations, the history and legacy of a Final Fantasy game, and the hype that was behind it, along with the amazing review scores that it did have, almost a 90 on Metacritic there. So most people say the game is absolutely awesome, and the whole controversy about being split up and all that pretty much was brushed to the wayside after the game came out and people saw the type of remake that this is, or retelling, or whatever the heck you want to classify it as, right? It's pretty high quality, and you do get your money's worth. There's plenty of game in there, plenty of replay value. So it turned a believer that were skeptical about it, myself included. Now, I still feel that, having the full game somehow would have been better, but it is what it is. If you play the game, you understand that they're doing something completely different than what they did before. So I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who's picking it up, but you'll know what I'm talking about once you beat the game. So if you look at that, that's Final Fantasy. That's a massive franchise. That's huge, right? if you're looking at going forward with Japanese RPGs and the sales and everything, the next Final Fantasy game that has an exclusive deal, console exclusive deal with Sony, they're getting money for that, so it'll mitigate the cost of not releasing on Switch or not releasing on Xbox right away and all that, because they're getting plenty of money. Now, if you look over to what happened with Persona and what's been going on, we've been talking about it, can Sega, can Square Enix, can Capcom, can all these companies, well, not Capcom really, but anybody who makes Japanese RPGs, more like that, people who make Japanese RPGs, even traditional ones, turn-based ones, can they really trust PlayStation 5 and Xbox to get the type of sales that they need or that they want as a capitalistic business? After looking and analyzing what happened with Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm not so sure if they can, because that is the biggest Japanese RPG out there. It is the biggest franchise when it comes to out of Japan, and if that one on that install base is, I would say, struggling to hit 10 million fairly quickly, I think it paints a picture of what the market and what's going on in Japan and what's going on with the taste of what gamers are playing pretty much across the world. Whereas 10 million units for a Final Fantasy game, the stature of that, 10 million should be something to where they could hit, considering Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy 9 and 8 and what the game sales of those were. Now, don't get me wrong, Final Fantasy 7 might reach there, but if I'm Sega, if I'm ATLUS, I can't look at that and be encouraged to say, okay, PlayStation only, oh, by the way, no deal, right? Because there wasn't a deal. From what we know, there was no deal that they got from Sony, you know, when it comes to big bag money, like Square Enix got from Sony for Final Fantasy VII Remake. There was no big bag money. So I think that the dynamic shift, right, as of the time that Persona was being developed on the PS3 originally, obviously it still had the Japanese influence. People were buying the JRPGs there. It was selling a bit better and stuff like that, or at least that was the decline of what was happening, and they moved it over to the PS4 as well. We're starting to finally see them branch out a little bit with Persona 5 Scramble, with games like Persona 4 Golden on the PC, and seeing big sales. So I don't think for the next Persona game, so Persona 6, they can fully trust what's going on with the PlayStation 5. Also considering the debut sales of the PlayStation 5 in Japan, obviously Sony is not focused on that market, only 118,000 units in its debut week, much lower because of the stock allocation. They didn't wait and have a staggered launch like before. They just said, hey, we're gonna ship most of them to Europe and also to the US, which really hit the Japanese market. But that was also due to they don't just really think that they're going to focus on that market, and the Switch and mobile gaming has kind of taken over there. So if I'm Sega, if I'm ATLUS, there's no way I have utmost confidence in PlayStation only for the next Persona game, or even for the current Persona games and what you're trying to do with remasters, remakes, and re-releases, because ATLUS did say that they are looking, or more like Sega did say that they will start releasing more of those, which we've already seen re-releases. Catherine Full Body, for example, games like Shin Megami Tensei 3, Nocturne, that game's also released multi-platform, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch, good debut opening sales for that game in Japan. So they're already on that shift. So I think, like I've stated many times before, it's only a matter of time before we start seeing some of these other big Persona games, 3, 4, 5, come over to more platforms. And I don't think Sega is going to trust fully with PlayStation for the next Persona game. And if they did, they need to get a bag. They need to get a money bag for that, because I'm looking at a lot of the sales do come from Japan starting out first. And how many systems are even going to be sold there? I mean, yes, here in America, they're going to sell a lot of systems, but what are the sales ratios going to be for what people are looking to play, right? Install base compared to sales. Persona 5 did sell really well on the PlayStation 4, but it was also discounted very quickly, and it got a large number of sales after being discounted. So if you have that on the Nintendo Switch instead, you can probably charge a premium price and keep it at a higher premium price for a longer amount of time. Plus you get that Japanese audience, in addition to more of a worldwide audience as well, because you have Japan and also the US and Europe, because Nintendo's markets are split somewhat evenly. Obviously, the US is still the biggest market, but you have a lot bigger market in Japan, pretty much the Switch being the leader in that country right now at this point. And by the time that Persona 6 is ready, I mean, imagine where the Nintendo Switch ecosystem install base will be at. So I just don't see them really focusing in on that unless there's a lot of money involved. And I don't think Sony's going to really pay for that. They're going for the bigger games like the Call of Duties and stuff like that, the exclusive deals with that, or the utmost biggest JRPGs like Final Fantasy, for example. So we'll see what happens in the future. I'm just kind of giving my thoughts and opinions on that, a discussion on it, just because I was analyzing the numbers and looking. And yeah, I just don't see Sega and Atlus trusting, okay, PlayStation 5 only for the next Persona game, considering those Japanese sales. But I still feel that it could be multi-platform. We're going to have to wait and see. And I would probably say they're in a dilemma because they see, okay, if it's PlayStation 5, look at the power and everything, but the Switch has the install base, has the Japanese base, you know, so it's going to be interesting to see how it actually plays out and what they decide to do at the end. So what are you guys' thoughts on both of these topics that we had here? I'd love to hear it in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a follow on there. Stay up to date on all the latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.